Hey guys, Josh Stracner here, Bassmaster Elite Series Pro. Talk to you a little bit about wintertime fishing. And when I say wintertime, it can be, late fall all the way to early spring. And one of the biggest things I see people do, and maybe making a mistake, and sometimes I'm guilty of it myself, is trying to figure out when to slow down and how much to slow down in the wintertime. That's all really going to be based on the water temperature and where you're at in the country. So I'm gonna go through a selection of baits that I pretty much keep tied on all through the winter. First thing that always comes to my mind that I always keep tied on is a jerkbait, a suspending jerkbait. And sometimes you have to kind of play with it a little bit. You always want it to suspend perfectly in the winter. And I'm talking cold weather, super cold water. When the water gets down in the low 50s and even in the 40s, it's really hard to beat a suspending jerkbait. I like my jerkbait to sit almost perfectly flat, maybe just a little bit nose down. So you really have to work with all jerkbaits are different, depends on what size line and depends on the body of water that you're on too. As far as the retrieve, I like to throw it out there, crank it down to the pretty much the max depth that it's going to run. Pause it, and don't be afraid. I see a lot of guys that sometimes they just barely twitch their jerkbait, but there's times in the wintertime, even when it's cold, you can really pop that jerkbait. But once you jerk it, let it sit, and sometimes it might be a 4, 5, and even a 15-second pause. And that's for spotted bass, largemouth bass, smallmouth. Kind of works everywhere in the country, but you really got to let the fish tell you what to do on wherever you're at in the country, and about how to work your jerkbait. But definitely in the middle of the wintertime, try to let that jerkbait sit, pause, let them come up to it. A lot of times the fish are moving slow, so they're not just going to run up to it and pop it. So just let the fish tell you what to do on that. Another hard bait I always keep handy is a square bill crankbait. This is a Strike King Chick Magnet Jr. flat-sided crankbait. Everybody kind of knows about the flat-sided crankbait all over the country. Just the way it comes through the water in the wintertime, fish really love a flat side. And also on this crankbait, in the dead of winter, if you get just a decently warm day, I had normally warm day maybe for 2 days in a row, don't be afraid to go up dirt shallow and throw a crankbait in the wintertime, any kind of a square bill. A lot of times the stuff I'll be targeting, the stuff I can actually physically see in the water with my eyes. And usually it's kind of like a after lunchtime kind of deal. Later in the afternoon is when those fish, if you catch it on a little bit of warm day, they'll pull up in that 1-2 foot of water to try to sit there and pretty much warm up is what they're doing. So don't be afraid to throw a crankbait. Usually I throw this on 12-pound line. If I'm throwing it in a lot of wood or heavy cover, I'll go to monofilament, 12 or 15-pound monofilament. And this is another bait that you don't really want to fish fast. I throw it on a slower gear ratio reel, but I just want to crawl that thing across the bottom, bump it into something, bump it into a stump or a rock or whatever you can see out there in the water, and just let it float up and just barely crank it back down. In the wintertime, super slow, and that's how I like to throw my flat-sided crankbait. Another bait, as far as bottom contact baits, I always keep a big jig tied on in the wintertime. This is a Strike King structure jig. The reason I like this type of a jig versus a flipping jig or just a straight football jig, you can really kind of, the way it's designed, it's kind of a do-it-all jig, and I like to be versatile. I don't want to have 2 or 3 different jigs tied on in the wintertime. But with a big, I like a big, bulky, heavy profile jig. With this one, I can flip with it. If I come by a lay down, I can pitch it in there. And also if I come by some rock piles or something offshore, I can cast to it and drag it around. In the wintertime, it's really hard to beat a big jig. In the wintertime, I don't trim my skirts. I like a big skirt with a big trailer. And also it's something that you want to fish slow. And usually I stick to no more than a ½ ounce in the wintertime, 3/8 sometimes, just to keep it slow and moving around real slow, because that's where the fish they're moving slow. I like throwing a really big wide body creature style bait for 2 reasons. First reason, hear everybody talk about just bulking it up, but really to me what I want a big trailer to do on my jig is to make this, I don't want my jig, when I pitch it in the water, I don't want it to fall vertically, kind of straight down. having that big, wide, long trailer, I want my jig, when I pitch it in the water, it falls almost horizontally flat in the water, kind of almost just glides down real natural. I don't want it to nose down too fast. So throwing that with a big skirt and a big wide trailer, when you pitch it in the water, it just kind of floats down almost horizontally like I talked about. And to me, that triggers the bite more than just being a big bulky jig. So having that wide trailer really makes it fall flat, and to me, that's what gets the bites. Another bait, I use it to kind of cover water in the wintertime. This is just a swing head, football tungsten swing head from Strike King. With this bait, you can really be versatile. You can put any style, whether it's like a grub style bait or a creature bait like this, and you can even put a swim bait, smaller swim baits on a swing head. It's just something I can kind of cover water with in the wintertime, just maybe get a reaction bite, feel what kind of bottom contents there are. If I can just pull up on a point, I can throw something like this out there. I can really feel around, feel gravel spots. And if I do find like a good hard bottom, which is what you want to find, then I can pick up a jerkbait or another crankbait. So you kind of got to just keep an open mind. Wintertime fishing, you need to slow down. You just need to slow down your mind. Try not to move around too fast. Those fish are not wanting to move around a lot. They're not wanting to eat a lot. So I keep 4, 5, 6 different baits tied on that kind of cover a little bit of everything. And the biggest key is just slow down during the winter time, and you should have a lot better luck.